The damp cloth slowly slid over the glass table, leaving a bright trail that was soon lost in the immensity of the room. Lori Monroe was on her knees, her back hunched and her eyes teary. The smell of fresh pine mingled with the expensive perfume that pervaded the room, a scent too sweet for someone who carried the grief of a son buried at the age of 7. Outside, the dry noise of imported car doors broke the silence of the morning. One by one, the engines fell silent, and the rhythmic sound of high heels approached the main entrance. From above, between white linen curtains, billionaire Jonathan Harrison watched the parade of the 5 women he had invited to one day peculiar. Next to him, little Aiden pressed a stuffed toy tightly to his chest. "They arrived, son. Today, you're going to choose who can be your new mother." Downstairs, in a grey uniform and yellow gloves, Lori didn't even look up, invisible, as always. How many women have heard secrets that weren't meant for their ears, and silenced? How many have cleaned the floors of mansions where they would never be welcome at the table? But in that house, on that day, an unexpected truth would be revealed, and it would all start with the choice of a child. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. There was a moment when all eyes were on little Aiden. It was the most anticipated party of the year, full of lights, bubbling champagnes, and rehearsed smiles. Cameras captured every gesture, every word. The 5 rich women waited anxiously, dressed as if they were ready for a parade, believing that they would be chosen to take the place of mother in that boy's life. But he ignored them all. He walked slowly among the guests, looked into the eyes of the only person who treated him with true affection, and in a firm voice he said, "I choose her." The whole hall froze, and the woman he pointed to, it was just the cleaning lady. What happened next left families in ruins, destroyed gold masks, and revealed secrets that had been buried for years. But before everything is revealed, let me ask you something from the bottom of my heart. If this story has ever touched any part of you, if you've ever felt invisible like Lori, if you've ever had to swallow your tears just so you don't lose your place, then enjoy this video, subscribe here to the channel, and stay with me until the end. Because stories like this aren't just for watching, they are to feel, remember, and who knows, heal. The automatic gate opened with a metallic hiss, and one by one, the luxury cars glided through the cobblestone entrance as if parading on a power catwalk. A white Porsche, a black Range Rover, a silver Bentley, a red Tesla, and finally, a navy blue Mercedes. Each vehicle shone as if it had been polished just for that moment. From the glass-enclosed kitchen, where the smell of fresh coffee mingled with that of wood wax, Lori Monroe watched in silence. She was wiping her hands on her apron when the first woman got out of the car. Amanda Whitmore, a digital influencer with millions of followers, wore a tight white dress and a designer bag hanging from her forearm. He got off smiling, his teeth as white as the car. Close behind was Natalie DeLuca, a renowned plastic surgeon in Manhattan who didn't even look at the garden or the employees. Veronica Blake walked out of Range Rover, adjusting her sunglasses while talking on the phone about a corporate merger. Brielle Thompson, the Texan, appeared in a beige hat, stiletto heels, and a laugh that seemed trained. Finally, Candice Langford, a best-selling author on how to raise children without losing style, came down carrying 2 pink suitcases, followed by an assistant balancing flowers and gift boxes. Lori lowered her eyes and continued cleaning the countertop, trying to ignore the parade that was happening a few meters from her. Upstairs, Jonathan Harrison straightened his tie in front of the hall mirror, while his son, Aiden, looked out the window with a furrowed brow. "They look like store dolls, Dad," he said in a low voice. Jonathan smiled but didn't answer. He touched the boy's shoulder and asked, "Just be open. How are you? We need to try." Downstairs, the 5 women were greeted by a butler, all smiling, exchanging forced compliments and comments about the weather, as if they were on a TV show. Lori was carrying a tray with glasses of flavored water when, as she climbed a step on the side stairs to deliver the drinks, she tripped lightly on the carpet. The scare was quick, but the fall, painfully symbolic. The tray slipped, hit the railing, and one of the glasses rolled to Candice Langford's feet. One of her suitcases tipped over, opening the lid. Perfectly folded clothes fell on the marble floor. A thick silence took over the entrance. Candice put her hand to her waist, gave Laurie a furious look and snapped, "But what is this? Incompetent! Do you have any idea how much this suitcase costs?" Laurie, still kneeling, picked up the shards of glass with her eyes downcast. Blood flowed discreetly from the palm of her hand, but she tried to hide it. Jonathan appeared, trying to contain the damage with a conciliatory tone. "It was an accident. It's okay, Candice." But it wasn't. The embarrassment was a heavy cloud hanging over the room. Aidan ran downstairs and went straight to Laurie. He didn't say anything. He just took a handkerchief from his pocket and held it out to her, while his eyes met hers with an improbable maturity for her 8 years. Laurie took a deep breath. At that moment, she was not just a cleaning lady kneeling on the floor. She was a woman with her heart in tatters, trying not to collapse in front of a world that treated her as invisible. How many times has a poor woman had to swallow humiliations like this just to not lose her job? How many times is pain swallowed with the dust that is cleaned? How many have felt small inside a house too big to fit their dignity? If this scene touched you, comment here. "It touched me. I've lived it." Or "It's true." Sometimes a comment is all we need to remember that we are not alone. Seeing Aidan there, crouched beside her, holding her injured hand so lovingly, was like a thread of light through the darkness. Laurie returned the gesture with a shy smile, a gesture that did not go unnoticed, especially for Amanda, who watched everything with sharp eyes. The candidates went to the main hall, where drinks and formal presentations were served. Jonathan made a point of introducing each one to his son, as if he were selling an idea. "This is Dr. Natalie. She saves lives with her hands. That's Veronica, a powerful businesswoman. This is Amanda, famous for teaching how to be happy every day." Aidan smiled politely, but his gaze was looking for Laurie, who was now cleaning the stairs with slow movements, as if erasing the very existence of the place. In the hall, between glasses of sparkling wine, Candice whispered to Brielle, "This woman needs to be removed from here. Children get attached easily, and that can get in the way of everything." Brielle nodded, casting a cross glance at Laurie. The first stone had been thrown, and what seemed like just a contest of appearances was about to turn into a silent war. But what none of those women knew was that Aidan's heart had already chosen long before they set foot in that house. That's it. It could change everyone's destiny. The following days transformed the Harrison mansion into an exhibition stage. The 5 women, each with their own perfectly calculated strategy, competed for attention as if they were on a reality show. Amanda hired a mini video studio and recorded vlogs with Aidan, even against his wishes. Natalie brought in a French chef to teach the boy how to prepare macarons, even though she knew he was allergic to almonds. Brielle organized a camp in the garden with luxury tents and marshmallows that no one touched. Veronica prepared a PowerPoint presentation on how to be an effective mom while still being CEO. And Candice distributed her autographed book to all the employees of the house, as if she were at a literary fair. Aidan watched everything with a shy smile, but his body said otherwise. He scratched his collar, avoided women's touch, and always found a way to escape. It was in the corridors of the mansion, away from the eyes of the cameras and artificial lights, that he ran to where he really felt safe. Laurie was washing the dishes in the kitchen when she felt 2 arms around her waist. "Can you make that peanut cookie again?" asked Aidan, his voice soft. She wiped her hands slowly, looked at her watch and replied softly, "If we go fast, there's time before dinner." And it was there, among flour, butter, and hidden smiles, that Aidan became a child again. While the candidates offered helicopters and trips to private islands, Laurie offered him what no one there seemed to understand: presents. She would cut the dough with molds shaped like stars and hearts, and he would laugh when her nose was full of flour. At night, while they all tried to take turns in the boys' room, telling exaggerated stories of adventures or achievements, Aidan pretended to have a headache just so they would leave. And when everything fell silent, Laurie, who was already in the back room collecting her purse, was called softly. "Can you tell that train story?" She would enter slowly, sit next to the bed and begin. "Once upon a time there was a boy who lived in a grey city but dreamed of seeing the blue sea." Her voice lulled not only Aidan's sleep but also her own heart, which gradually reopened to feel. But Laurie knew that it couldn't last. She tried to keep her distance. After all, he was not family. He had no right to that affection. Her place was the waxed floor, not the headboard. But how to say this to a child's heart? One afternoon, while spreading sheets on the makeshift back clothesline, Aidan appeared with a paper airplane. "That's me flying," he said. Laurie smiled. "And where do you want to fly?" The response was a whisper. "To a place where I don't have to choose a mother. Only stay with those who understand me." That sentence pierced her chest like a sharp blade. She crouched down and looked into the boy's eyes. "You miss your mother, don't you?" He nodded with trapped tears. "I also lost my son. He was almost his age. Since then, I haven't been able to sleep properly." The boy leaned his head on her shoulder, silently, and in that wordless embrace, two wounds recognized each other. From the top of the balcony, Amanda watched everything. The simple, almost invisible scene set off an alarm in his head. The next day, she commented to the others, "This woman, this cleaning lady, there's something strange. The boy is attached. That could end everything." The security cameras of the house recorded every step, every look, every gesture, and between records of rehearsed lunches and facade dinners, there were also true moments, like the one where Laurie combed Aidan's hair while softly singing a song that no one else knew. It was an invisible bond, built without promises, without interests, without makeup. But what happens when true love threatens the plans of those who only see power and status? How far would they be willing to go to get Laurie out of the way? And what kind of traps would begin to be sown in silence between crystal glasses and razor-sharp smiles? In the elegant dim light of the mansion's movie theater, where leather-clad walls drowned out sounds and the bluish light of the projector flickered aimlessly, 5 women sat in reclining chairs like generals in war meetings. Glasses of white wine gleamed between perfectly enameled fingers. Amanda ran her finger over the outline of the glass before speaking, her voice firm and sweet as poison. "We are losing space for a cleaner." Candace laughed contemptuously, adjusting the shiny earrings. "Not a cleaner, professional manipulator. Have you seen how it insinuates itself into the boy's emotions?" Natalie crossed her legs, serious. "He only has eyes for her. That can end everything. If Jonathan lets himself be carried away by his son's heart, we are out." Veronica, always strategic, leaned forward. "So we have to cut this connection, and fast." Brielle from the back completed with a slurred smile. "We'll get her out of here without getting your hands dirty." It was sealed there, between velvet cushions and forced smiles, a silent pact of destruction. The next morning, Laurie arrived for work and was surprised by the bucket out of place. The broom had been hidden. The keys to the cleaning products cabinet were gone. One of the candidates, feigning kindness, commented in a passive-aggressive tone, "You should be more organized. This house is too big for so much oblivion." Laurie didn't answer. He swallowed. With the wet cloth in her hand, she continued to clean the same corners where no one saw her, but where she heard everything. In the garden, the fountain had been turned off. In the bathroom, someone had changed the soap for liquid glue. In the hallway, he accidentally stepped on broken glass crystals that were not there the day before. But she didn't complain. "I just cleaned it up." Every step slower, every look more suspicious. Jonathan, entertained with business commitments and the company's new marketing project, barely realized what was happening. And when the candidates, with millimetrically rehearsed gestures, began to sow doubts, he just listened, distracted. "Jonathan, Did you know that the new employee comes into Aiden's room even after hours? The other day I saw her in the pantry with the boy, alone. She looks too involved, don't you think? Innuendo, words loose as needles, spread carefully so that they would hurt without a trace. Laurie began to feel the weight on her shoulders. I would come home with my hands burning with excess products and my eyes burning with fatigue. But it was the silence that hurt the most. That feeling that she was surrounded, watched, judged, without ever being able to defend herself. The only good soul in that scenario was Maria, the cook of the house, a Dominican lady with slow steps and a deep gaze. One afternoon, as they were chopping vegetables side by side, Laurie vented in a choked voice. "I think I'll ask to leave at the end of the month. I won't take much longer. I'm not welcome here." Maria dropped the knife in the sink, wiped her hands, and stared at her. "You are more welcome than all those women combined. You have truth, and those who carry truth in their chest scare those who live on lies." Laurie smiled, but her eyes did not hide her fear. That night, when she collected the sheets from the clothesline, she found one of Amanda's dresses thrown among the plants, dirty with dirt. He knew right away that it would also fall on his shoulders. It was the beginning of the siege. But what those women didn't know yet, it's just that they were playing with a woman who had already lost everything, and that's why she was no longer afraid of losing. The question was, how far would they be willing to go to eliminate Laurie's presence? And how long would Jonathan remain blind? The sun hadn't even warmed the rooftops of Scarsdale as Laurie went upstairs, as usual, to clean the second-floor guest room. She carried her cart with folded cloths, citrus disinfectant, and a small portable radio where she sometimes let instrumental music play quietly so she wouldn't feel so alone. But that day, as she turned the golden doorknob, a strong smell of perfume hit her like a punch. And what she saw for a moment made her freeze. Makeup scattered on the floor, torn underwear thrown on the bed, drawers open, broken bottles. A bottle of perfume, very expensive, lay on its side with half the liquid running down the wood. Laurie took a hesitant step inside, her heart racing. My God, what happened here? And it was at that moment that Amanda appeared in the hallway with an expression of theatrical horror and her voice sharp as a blade. It was her, I knew it. He came into my room, moved my things. Look at this, my favorite dress is destroyed. The noise attracted other voices. Candace appeared at the door, followed by Brielle and Veronica, who widened their eyes as if they were watching a show. Within seconds, Amanda's screams echoed through the walls of the mansion. This woman came here as if she were the owner of the house. She has to be fired, now! Laurie stepped back, her hands raised, her chest heaving. I didn't do that. I would never come here for no reason. Someone set this up, I swear by everything I have. But the truth, in that house, was beginning to become a rare item. Jonathan went up with one of the security guards, and the tired look of someone who no longer knew what to believe. Amanda threw herself on the couch, feigning tears, pointing to the broken objects as incontrovertible evidence. Look at this. She is unbalanced. You're trying to sabotage us. Laurie stared at Jonathan, her eyes wet with disappointment. Mr. Harrison, you know me. I've been working here since the accident. I never... Before she finished, a small voice cut through the chaos. She would never do that. Aiden was standing at the top of the stairs, his fists clenched and his face red with indignation. She never touched her things. She doesn't even enter anyone's room without asking. Why are they lying? Jonathan looked at his son, then the 5 women who now surrounded Amanda as an informal court of selective justice. Pressed, he murmured, Laurie, maybe you'd better not go into the upstairs bedrooms anymore, at least for now. Only until things calm down. His voice sounded like a sentence. Laurie lowered her eyes. The silence in his mouth hid the scream that was born inside. He passed through the corridor with a hurried but dignified step, the throat locked. He went downstairs feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. In the kitchen, she left the radio off. She couldn't even stand music at that moment. Hours later, with her simple backpack on her back and her uniform marked by splashes of perfume and humiliation, Laurie left the back of the mansion without saying goodbye. He stopped at the bus stop, staring at the ground, trying to understand at what point his life had turned into a minefield. The wind was cold on his face. On that street, surrounded by mansions, she was just another forgotten shadow. She followed in silence, carrying that weight that no one saw. And if you're following this story right now, feeling touched by all this, leave a like and subscribe. It is the most beautiful way to show that this pain has not gone unnoticed. Sometimes all a woman needs is to feel that someone still sees what she lives in silence. Once at home, Laurie took off her uniform with trembling hands. He threw himself on the old armchair in the living room, holding back the cry that insisted on falling. He thought about packing his bags and leaving Scarsdale, starting over in another place, with another name, who knows? She didn't know what she could take anymore. But it was there, at that moment when all seemed lost, that she opened her backpack to get the keys and found the ticket, folded carefully on blue paper. A childish and firm lyric read, "Please don't leave. I need you. Aiden." The tears fell without a filter. It wasn't just a child asking for help. It was a pure scream in the midst of a world full of masks, and for the first time Laurie understood she couldn't give up, because it wasn't just for her, it was for him. But if she decided to stay, would she be ready to face what those women would still be able to do? And would Jonathan ever open his eyes to see who was really on the right side? It was early in the morning when Hector, the old caretaker of the Harrison mansion, finished making his rounds of the silent gardens. He was a discreet man, with a slow speech and an observant eye. He liked to arrive early and leave late. He knew every corner of the house, every creak of the floor, and every shadow that moved in the cold dawns. That night, as usual, he passed by the reading room and saw Jonathan's notebook still on the table. Next to it, a forgotten black pen drive without identification. Hector thought about putting it away, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe a sixth sense, made him connect the device to the computer. A single folder appeared on the screen. Backup Cam's Gint. Clicked. There were several video files with automatic names and times. He selected the one from the day before, at the exact time of the confusion in Amanda's room, and what he saw made his heart race. Amanda entering the room alone, opening the drawers in a hurry, picking up a dress and tearing it hard, pouring the perfume on purpose, throwing makeup on the floor, then straightening his face in front of the mirror and leaving with an air of rehearsed despair. Hector put his hand to his mouth. "My God," murmured. He sat there for long minutes, struggling with the weight of the decision. He knew what that meant. It wasn't just a lie. It was a deliberate attempt to destroy an innocent woman. The next morning, he knocked on the door of Jonathan's office. The businessman, tired, greeted him with a nod. "Sorry to bother, sir, but I found something, and I think you need to see it." Jonathan hesitated, but accepted the flash drive. He watched the video in silence, without blinking, his face tensed, his eyes fixed on the screen. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair and stared into space. Amanda, the most mediatic candidate, the one he thought had the best chance of pleasing the public if the process became something public, had lied. The door opened slowly and Aiden rushed in. "Dad, have you talked to Laurie yet?" Jonathan looked at his son. "Not yet, Aiden. Did you see how sad she was? She almost cried in front of me. She's not like the others." Jonathan took a deep breath. "There are things that are complicated, son. She's my friend. Have you ever thought that maybe she's here for a reason?" Jonathan did not answer. He took the pen drive and put it in a locked drawer. Something inside him was beginning to change. But he was still caught between two worlds, that of social reason, of appearances, and that of true affection, which until then had seemed too dangerous to him to be trusted. Downstairs, Laurie washed the windows of the dining room. The windows were impeccable, but she rubbed it as if trying to erase the pain inside her chest. Since the episode in the bedroom, no one had spoken to her. The other women passed her with contempt, as if her presence was offensive. Maria, the cook, left small notes of support in her purse. "You have light. Don't give up." but Laurie could barely smile. I was too hurt, too tired. At lunch, while the candidates organized a new family activity, a virtual reality safari day, Laurie was in charge of assembling the equipment. Amanda gave a venomous look and commented out loud, "Be careful not to knock over anything new." Laurie swallowed. "You can leave it." But there was something different that morning. She moved more steadily, as if a silent seed had sprouted within her. She didn't know that the truth had already begun to stir, and that there were eyes in her favor now. Jonathan passed her in the hallway and for the first time in days looked into her eyes. He said nothing, but his look was different, less distant, less blind. Laurie continued her work in silence, but inside I felt something strange, a restlessness, as if the wind were changing direction, as if a new force were approaching, discreet but powerful. The pen drive was still stored, but how long can the truth stand to be silent before screaming? And when it comes to light, who will be prepared to face everything she reveals? Jonathan Harrison paced back and forth in the dark wood-clad office, where dusty books and corporate trophies graced the shelves like trophies of an empire built on logic, not feelings. But for the first time in a long time, logic seemed too fragile to him. The video of Amanda setting up the scene in the bedroom still echoed in her mind like an uncomfortable whisper. And Aiden kept repeating that Laurie was the only person who made him feel heard. He summoned the 5 women for a private conversation. He wanted to observe, test, provoke, and who knows, see some crack of truth in those impeccable expressions. They met in the meeting room, with a panoramic view of the impeccably pruned garden. They were all there, Amanda with her white silk blouse and eyes of false innocence, Natalie with her arms crossed and an air of boredom, Veronica with a fitted blazer and hard features, Candice with a neutral countenance almost calculated, and Brielle, who did not let go of her cell phone. Jonathan was direct. "I watched a video from the internal cameras. There are indications that someone here may have set up the situation against employee Laurie." The phrase fell like a stone in the middle of the table. For a second, no one breathed. Amanda was the first to react. He frowned, put his hand on his chest, and in a trembling voice asked, "Are you really implying that one of us would sabotage a cleaning lady?" Veronica Calder crossed her legs. "With all due respect, Jonathan, we are here for a serious project, the creation of Aiden. This requires emotional stability and family ethics. It's not healthy for a cleaner to be so close to an emotionally vulnerable child." Candice interjected, "I understand that Aiden has grown fond, but that's exactly what makes it dangerous. Children do not know how to distinguish real bonds from affective need. It is our duty to protect him from that." "Of that?" Jonathan repeated bitterly. Brielle looked over her glasses. "Do you know about this woman's past? Because I heard she lost a child. No one knows for sure how. And that kind of trauma, Jonathan, can lead to dangerous attitudes." The room was freezing. Jonathan felt the blood rise. "Are you suggesting that it poses some risk to my son?" Amanda, always theatrical, let a tear flow. "That's not it. It's just that we feel that this woman has other intentions. She looks at you with a strange glow. Maybe I'm confusing things. You are a widower. You are needy. And she's smart." That was the sentence that broke the thread. Jonathan slammed his palm on the table, interrupting the staging. "Enough!" The silence was absolute. "If anyone here is confusing intentions, it's not Laurie." He stood up and looked at them all. "I'm going to install more cameras at strategic points, and if anyone here is lying, I'll find out." The women looked at each other, tense, but kept their pose. Amanda wiped the corner of her eye. Candice sighed deeply, but something in Jonathan's eyes was different now. It was no longer the passive gaze of a father seeking help. It was the look of a man who was beginning to understand what he was getting into. That same afternoon, Jonathan called the security technician. He asked for new cameras in the corridors, on the stairs, in the garden, in the reading room. "I want everything monitored, but with description." The man nodded. Meanwhile, On the other side of the house, Laurie was organizing the laundry clothes. He separated the pieces carefully, cleaned the floor with care. She continued her work as if nothing had happened, but inside, something about her was also beginning to change. She still didn't know about the video. I didn't know about the meeting, but his body felt it. There was something in the air, a different weight, a subtle discomfort in the women's behavior, a restlessness in Jonathan's walk, a different silence on the walls of the house. And it is at this point in the story that I need to tell you an important thing. As much as everything seems lost now, he does not give up, because the most surprising part of this story is yet to happen, and what's to come. It will turn everything upside down. The silent war had begun, but the heart of the house, that boy with the sweet eyes and sincere voice, had already made its choice. And this choice would be impossible to control. The question now was, who would fall first when the truth began to reveal itself? And what would happen if, in the midst of so many masks, a simple soul began to shine brighter than any appearance? The house was quieter than ever that afternoon. The sky of Scarsdale was overcast, as if nature itself sensed that something dark hovered over those impeccable walls. Laurie walked the halls with the microfiber cloth in her hands, wiping the door handles with almost automatic gestures. She was tired, but more than that, she felt more and more isolated, like a loose piece on a board playing against her. Little did she know that that morning a manila envelope had been delivered directly into Jonathan's hands, containing coldly printed pages, laden with accusations that seemed to come from a twisted past. Inside the envelope there were falsified records, a police report of abandonment of incapacitated, a report of dismissal for improper behavior, and even a history of dubious identity, as if Laurie had changed her name to hide something. The sender was anonymous, but Jonathan knew, or at least suspected, where it came from. Brielle, discreet, had left too many clues, and yet standing there with those papers in hand, he felt the weight of doubt poison his confidence. At lunchtime, he called Laurie into the living room. She arrived with her eyes downcast, her hands still damp with soap, her uniform clean but worn. Jonathan held the documents with an indecipherable expression. "Laurie, I received this information today. About you." She looked at the envelope and her heart sank. Just by seeing the weight of the paper, the coat of arms of the alleged investigation company, I already knew it was a lie. But a well-told lie, packaged as truth. They say you lost custody of your child, who lied about his name, who has a history unstable. Laurie sat up slowly. He took a deep breath. Her eyes did not deviate from his. "My name is Laurie Monroe. I had a son, Joshua. He died 6 years ago in a car accident. I was the only one in the car. I survived. He didn't. Since that day, I wake up every morning with the same pain. I worked in old people's homes after that. I cleaned bathrooms, changed diapers, held hands at the last breath. I've never lied about who I am. I just never had the opportunity to tell it." Jonathan remained silent. She continued, her voice breaking. "I'm not perfect, but I'm decent. Everything I do is with care, with respect, because it's the only thing I can still offer the world. And I would never, ever hurt your child. I would never approach him out of interest." For a moment, time stopped in the room. And it is in this kind of silence, where words can no longer hold the pain, that life shows its hardest face. How many people have been judged for forged documents, for rumors spread, for smiles that hide daggers? And how many, like Laurie, are still there, standing, even bleeding inside? If you've ever felt this injustice on your skin, comment here. I understand. I've been through this. What a pain. Because when the truth is invisible, all that's left is to resist. Jonathan finally stood up. He walked to the window and stood there, staring at the garden for long minutes. I don't know who else to believe," he said, almost in a whisper. Laurie nodded. "That's okay. The truth doesn't need you to believe it now. It just needs to be seen." And at that moment, Jonathan realized that the woman in front of him was not trying to defend herself as if she were afraid. She just told her story as if she had already learned that the world sometimes doesn't listen. But what he didn't know yet, it's just that someone inside that house had started to gather evidence, and that very soon the lie that seemed perfect would begin to unravel around the edges, because no matter how hard they try to bury the truth, it always finds a way to flourish. The question now was, who would be the next to fall? The rain was pouring down on the Harrisons' garden that Wednesday morning, running down the magnolia leaves like suppressed tears. The mansion seemed suspended in time, shrouded in tense silence, as if the corridors themselves were waiting for something. Laurie, as always, arrived before everyone else. He took off his wet coat and hung it on the hanger of the employee's pantry. His eyes were red from the sleepless night, but his countenance was the same as always, discreet, humble, tireless. She didn't know it, but fate was already starting to move the pieces of the game for her. Maria, the cook of the house, climbed with firm steps up the service stairs to Jonathan's office. He carried in his hands a thick envelope wrapped in a simple string ribbon. Jonathan, still immersed in doubts, greeted her with an exhausted expression. "Excuse me, Mr. Harrison. I know it's not my place, but sometimes, when the powerful doubt, all that remains is for us to show the truth with our hands." She placed the envelope on the table. Jonathan hesitated, then opened it. Inside, there were yellowed letters from Laurie's former employers. A sick lady from Chicago, an elderly couple from Vermont, a single mother from upstate New Jersey. The words were clear, handwritten. "Laurie took care of my mother with love. She helped me when no one else wanted to. My son still asks for Aunt Laurie every day." There were also photos. Laurie smiling next to a lady in a wheelchair, holding the hand of a gentleman in the hospital, reading a book to two children sitting on the mat. Maria wiped her hands on her apron and said, "I've been working here for 15 years. I've seen a lot of people coming in and out, but I've never seen anyone treat this place with more respect than Laurie. She is the best person who has ever walked through this house, and if you allow them to throw it away like garbage, you're going to be making a mistake that there's no turning back." Jonathan was unable to respond immediately. He took one of the letters. He read it in silence. The old woman's trembling handwriting read, "If I still breathe today, it's because Laurie believed in me when even my children didn't want to take care of me anymore." He squinted, took a deep breath and said, "Mary, all this, it's very touching, but they have a dossier. They made formal accusations. I need more objective proof." Maria was not shaken. "Then look for it, sir, because those who seek honestly always find." That same afternoon, Jonathan took the flash drive out of the drawer and handed it to his personal lawyer. He asked for a thorough analysis of the files, all the cameras, all the records. "Turn everything over. If there's something hidden, I want to know." Meanwhile, outside, the candidates laughed in the game room. Amanda led the conversation with an air of victory. "I said it would work. That story of the letters, all needy old lady stuff. Now all that's left is for her to leave." De Candice added, "He already has the material in his hand. All that remains is to sign the resignation. A matter of time." Veronica smiled sideways. "Rich men always choose what shines the most. Cleaning lady doesn't shine. Cleaning lady cleans the floor." Laugh. They celebrated as if they were already counting on the victory before the final whistle. In the hallway, Laurie was pushing the cleaning cart. He heard the muffled laughter, the clinking of crystal glasses, the sound of a new humiliation about to happen. But it didn't stop. Outside, the rain was beginning to stop. A ray of sunlight pierced the clouds, illuminating the stained glass window of the main room. And it is at this point that fate, silent as Laurie, begins to speak louder, because behind her silence there was evidence that no one expected to find. And a child who still held a note in his pocket, waiting for the right chance to show his father what his eyes still didn't want to see. The war was far from over. But what if the truth, the one who walked barefoot through the corridors, was about to gain a voice impossible to ignore, and when she spoke, who would still have the courage to continue lying? The walls of the Harrison mansion no longer held only echoes of hurried footsteps and muffled voices. Now they seemed to vibrate under the increasing tension, as if the air carried electricity. The 5 women, all dressed with meticulous elegance, climbed the steps together toward Jonathan's office. It was not a cordial visit. It was a siege, a final attack. Amanda led the group with the gait of someone who already considered herself victorious. Candace kept her gaze hard. Brielle bit her lips as if rehearsing the final blow. Veronica and Natalie just watched, sharp in silence. Jonathan was waiting for them behind the table, arms crossed, gaze steady. He tried to maintain neutrality on his face, but the wear and tear was visible. The women sat uninvited. Amanda was the first to speak. "Jonathan, we've reached our limit." He just arched his eyebrows, indicating that he should proceed. "The presence of that woman here is affecting everything. Your child is emotionally involved. The staff are agitated. And honestly, this is becoming a dangerous exposure for all of us." Veronica supported the argument. "What we are proposing here is a choice, a simple choice. Or she leaves, or we leave." The silence that followed lasted long enough for the weight of the sentence to take shape. Jonathan leaned forward. "What if I don't choose?" "So this all ends here now," Candace said, with the coldness of someone who knew how to play with emotional blackmail. He took a deep breath, feigning hesitation. He tapped his fingers on the table, looked at each one of them, and finally said, "Okay, I understand the gravity. I will make an official decision at the closing event. I just ask a little more time." The 5 exchanged satisfied looks, like predators that feel the blood of their prey. They got up slowly and left the office with the security of someone who thinks they won. But as soon as the door closed, Jonathan turned to the lawyer who was watching everything from the next armchair. "It's time to turn this around." The lawyer just nodded. He had been instructed to prepare everything for the announcement at the event. The videos from the cameras, the testimonies, the letters. Nothing would be done on the sly. The truth would come out before everyone. Little did they know that outside the door, hidden behind the velvet curtain of the hallway, Aiden had heard every word. Her heart was beating fast, her little hands sweaty. He ran down the halls, down the stairs, and across the kitchen like lightning, until he found Laurie folding sheets in the back of the laundry room. "Laurie," he said breathlessly, "I heard it." "Women want to send you away. But my father said he will turn the tide." She looked at him in surprise, with a white sheet between her arms. "What did you hear, my angel?" "He said he's going to show everything, on the day of the event, that he will tell the truth to everyone." Laurie knelt before the boy, held his face in her hands and hugged him tightly. "God sees everything, Aiden. If it is his will, justice will come." She tried to smile, but the lump in her throat wouldn't let her. His body trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. It was as if he had spent days swimming against the current, and now he saw on the horizon a firm stone to lean on, but he still needed to reach. She stood there in silence for a few seconds, caressing the boy's hair. And it is in this type of moment that we realize sometimes it is necessary to go through the dirtiest waters for us to taste our own cleanliness. Laurie, with calloused hands, worn uniform, and tired eyes, was the only one who didn't wear masks in that cruel game. And if this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, help me carry it forward. Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. Later, Laurie went back to mopping the main room, as if nothing had happened. The other women passed by her, haughty. Amanda even bumped lightly on his shoulder and whispered, "Enjoy the last few days, cleaner." Laurie didn't answer, but something in his eyes was no longer the same. It was no longer one of submission. She was someone who knew that something was moving in her favor, even if, on the outside, she was still surrounded by darkness. At the office, Jonathan received a call from the lawyer. "The material is ready, sir. The video of the sabotage, the testimonies, everything organized. Great. At the closing event, no one is going to leave without knowing who is who in this house." But as the plan took shape, one of the women, and it wasn't Amanda, began to suspect that something was wrong. And perhaps, in this game of masks and ambition, someone was about to betray the group itself. Who would be able to take the first step to save themselves, even if it meant taking down all the others? The main hall of the Harrison mansion was transformed that night into something reminiscent of a movie set. Tall candlesticks, crystal glasses, classical music in the background, and floral arrangements in shades of cream and gold. New York's elite were beginning to arrive with their striking perfumes, their sparkling jewels, and their empty words. Everything had been carefully prepared for the pre-decision dinner, an event that in the eyes of the guests would reveal who Jonathan Harrison considered the woman most fit to become his new wife, and more importantly, Aiden's new mother. Laurie was not on the guest list. His name did not appear on the golden menus on the table or on the numbered seats. She worked that night as usual, alternating between the kitchen and the hallway, almost invisible. He wore the same uniform as always, his hair tied up with a simple elastic band and his feet tired but firm. Even there, among so much brilliance, there was something about her that clashed, a silent presence that could no longer be ignored. From the top of the stairs, Amanda descended like a red carpet star, ruby red dress, diamond necklace, trained smile. Jonathan greeted her with a kiss on the cheek and led her to the head of the table. The other candidates looked at each other. Veronica squeezed the glass tighter. Candace disguised it with a sip of champagne. When everyone had settled down, Jonathan got up to make a toast. The sound of cutlery ceased. Tonight is special because it marks an important point in this process. Before the final event, I would like to recognize the one who, so far, has stood out with the most affinity, affection, and dedication to my son. His eyes widened around the table. Amanda shrugged her shoulders and tilted her head. Amanda Whitmore. The room erupted in applause. She stood up with false modesty, holding the bouquet of flowers that the maid had handed her seconds later. It's an honor to be here, and to be recognized for something I do with so much truth. But while Amanda spoke, Laurie watched from the kitchen door, and she was not the only one. Aiden, sitting next to his father, looked at Laurie with teary eyes, holding the napkin so tightly that it looked like he was going to tear it. He looked away from the table, pushed his chair, and ran out of the room. Laurie hesitated. Then he dropped the tea towel on the countertop and went after it. He found the boy sitting on the back stairs, his face hidden between his knees. Aiden. He looked up. Why did he choose her? Laurie sat next to him, saying nothing for a few seconds. The smell of lavender coming from the garden mingled with the muffled sound of the guests in the hall. Sometimes adults choose with their eyes, not with their hearts. But you understand me. You hear me. She ran her hand through his hair. I see you, Aiden, from day one. And there, on that cold staircase, with the sound of fake laughter echoing in the background, the two shared something more valuable than any inheritance, the silent acknowledgement that they belonged to each other, even if the world screamed otherwise. And that's why I ask you to stay with me until the end. Because when love is real, it doesn't need a showcase. He just needs to resist, and you still haven't seen what this story holds. Inside, the 5 women gathered in the living room while the waiters collected the dishes. Amanda, sitting like a crowned queen, laughed loudly. I told you it was a matter of time. A cleaning lady does not compete with a real woman. Veronica toasted. I hope she doesn't cry while cleaning the dishes. Candace added, that one over there must be packing her bags. What they didn't know was that each of these sentences was being recorded. The internal cameras had been adjusted by Jonathan, and now everything was stored silently, frame by frame. And as the night went on, with glasses being raised, masks remaining on the face and smiles being distributed as gifts, no one noticed that the ground was already beginning to move under their own feet. Because dinner may have given the impression that the game was decided, but what comes next? It will show who is really prepared to hear the truth, and who, when it is said out loud, will have the courage to continue sitting at the table. In the mansion's quiet library, With the curtains drawn and the fireplace turned off, Jonathan met with his lawyer to fine-tune the last details. On the mahogany table, a laptop displayed the images captured by the internal cameras over the past few days, the perfume being broken, the clothes torn, the insults veiled, the cruel laughter as Laurie cleaned in silence. Everything was there, cut with precision, subtitled, ordered by dates and times, a naked and nailed portrait of the truth that many insisted on distorting. Jonathan watched in silence, his fingers clasped in front of his mouth. The lawyer adjusted the phone, fiddled with spreadsheets and files with the coldness of someone who knows he is preparing a bomb about to explode. "You're all set," he said at last. "The video is 12 minutes long, enough to destroy any reputation or clear one." Jonathan took a deep breath. "Let's invite the press. Family, friends, sponsors. I want everyone here. It's going to be a scandal. So be it. The time has come to separate what looks are, than is true." In the kitchen, Laurie was washing the last dishes for the previous night's dinner, hands in the warm water, mind away. She still wondered if it was all real. Since Amanda's announcement, she had not exchanged a word with Jonathan. But Aidan kept popping up in every crack in the house, with a folded note, a silent hug, a smile that said, "Don't give up." It was then that an employee appeared at the door. "Laurie, Mr. Jonathan wants to talk to you." Now, her heart jumped. He wiped his hands, straightened his hair with a wet palm, and walked slowly to the office. The wood of the floor seemed to creak louder under his steps. When he entered, he saw Jonathan alone, standing, looking at a picture of Aidan as a baby on the bookshelf. "You can come in." She stood near the door, hesitant. "Laurie, I shouldn't have let it get to that point." She did not answer. "But I need to ask you something difficult, and I ask you to trust me, even if it seems unfair now." Laurie lowered her gaze. "I've heard it before, Mr. Harrison, and it wasn't always for good things. I understand, but this time it's different." He approached with slow steps. He handed her an envelope. Inside there was a letter of prior notice, dated and signed. "I want you, for the next 2 days, to pretend that you have accepted the resignation. That accepts the looks of contempt, the whispers. I want everyone to believe that they brought you down." It took her a while to understand. "Why?" Jonathan pointed to the laptop on the table. "Because I need them to let their guard down completely. On the day of the party, I'll show you everything. Live for everyone." Laurie held the envelope between her trembling fingers, the heart racing. "And if it doesn't happen? What if it's just another staging?" "It's not. How do I know you won't let me fall again?" Jonathan approached, more serious than ever. "Because now I've seen it. And who sees?" He can no longer pretend that he did not see it. Laurie walked away slowly. He put the envelope in his apron pocket and left. He walked through the garden, where the grass was still wet from the serene of the night before. She looked up at the sky, where the stars seemed to whisper answers she couldn't decipher. Fear tightened in his chest, but there was something different now. A flame, small, almost extinguished, but live. In the laundry room she sat quietly, hugging her own body. The cook came in and brought him a hot tea. "What's up now, Laurie?" She smiled weakly. "Nothing. Just another test of faith." Maria looked deep into her eyes. "Who has truth in their hearts, daughter? It may even fall, but it always gets up different. And maybe that's why this story isn't over yet, because while some plan to betray, others are about to reveal. And when the stage is set, who will have the courage to stay under the lights? The days leading up to the party were like an invisible, suffocating siege. The air in the mansion felt heavier, as if the walls whispered poison from corner to corner. Laurie went on with her chores, the same as always, sweeping the hallways, polishing the furniture, replacing the soaps. But nothing was the same. Now, the eyes followed her, not with curiosity, but with derision. Every corner of the house had become a stage where she was the silent target of humiliation. The 5 candidates, united by the same wounded ego, seemed to take turns in invisible shifts to attack her with words sharp as blades. Amanda, when she crossed paths with Laurie on the stairs, purposely dropped a very expensive bracelet and, in a loud tone, murmured, "It's better not to touch it. The last thing you touched is gone." Brielle, in front of other employees, commented in a voice, "People who come out of nowhere think they can take the shortcut to motherhood on the lap of a needy child." Laurie didn't answer. He guarded each offense as if he were gathering stones in his pocket, not to attack, but to be sure where he stepped. At the employees' dinner, the tension became the main course. Veronica left a magazine on the pantry table. On the cover, a headline in large letters, "Cleaning Lady Coup Plotter, Laurie Monroe, the woman who enchanted father and son." The story, fed by mysterious sources, painted Laurie as a profiteer. It said that she was using grief as a narrative and that there were rumors of an old involvement with Jonathan Harrison. Laurie read it silently, the trembling hand on the paper. He didn't cry, but when he returned to work, his steps weighed heavier. In the social bathroom, kneeling on the floor with a bristle brush in her hands, she closed her eyes for a moment. The tears flowed without noise. Only the sound of water running down the sink accompanied her pain. That same day, Aidan saw a scene he would never forget. Laurie was in the back garden, cleaning the windows of the greenhouse. Amanda approached with a cup in her hands. He smiled contemptuously and, with a disguised movement, threw the hot liquid over the wall, splashing it on Laurie. And when she recoiled in fright, Amanda still laughed. "I'm sorry. It must have been the poor way you moved." Aidan ran from there, his blood boiling, and entered his father's office, slamming the door hard. "Why are you letting them hurt her?" "You know it's a lie. You've seen the video." Jonathan put down the papers, taken by surprise. "Son, I need you to trust me. I'm doing this to protect the truth." "But she's alone. And you promised you would help." The boy's gaze was a mirror of the pain Laurie was trying to hide. Jonathan swallowed, torn between the plan he devised and the visible suffering of the woman who now bore on her face all the marks of injustice. Laurie, on the other hand, reached her limit that night. In the laundry room he sat on the narrow bench, his shoulders slumped, and took a crumpled paper from his pocket. It was Aidan's note. "Please don't leave. I need you." He read it again. Then he stared at his own reflection in the small glass window. I didn't see a defeated woman. He saw a woman injured, but standing. Maria, as always, appeared at the right time. He had a piece of cake and a steady look. "You're thinking of giving up, right?" Laurie lowered her eyes. "They're crushing me. And now there are people on the internet calling me a thief, of a coup plotter. I'm getting scared even of myself." Maria put the cake in her hand and said in a low voice, "Those who carry the truth in their chest do not need to flee from the fire, because fire only burns those who are made of lies. You're made of faith, girl." Laurie took a deep breath, held the plate with both hands. The smell of the vanilla cake, warm and simple, brought back a childhood memory. That was what kept her alive, the memory of what was real, what was pure, what could not be bought with a designer dress or a salon smile. And even without knowing what tomorrow would bring, she decided to continue, because what was at stake was not just a job, it was dignity. It was the right to be seen. The mansion slept that night like a sleeping beast, but what no one knew is that the stage was set, and in the middle of the closing party, when everyone expected confetti and smiles, it would be the silence that would first cut the air. Because soon the masks would fall off, one by one, and what would be left would be impossible to hide. Sunday arrived as if the sky held its breath. The Harrison mansion in Scarsdale was different. From early on, production vans, luxury cars and photographers' flashes moved the immense main garden, where a structure was set up with a stage, white curtains and a huge LED screen in the background. The sound of heels on the stone pavement mingled with the clinking of champagne glasses and the forced smiles of those who had become accustomed to staging happiness in front of the cameras. Laurie arrived early, as usual. He wore a simple uniform and his hair tied up with a shabby elastic band, the same pair of white hand-washed sneakers. It went unnoticed among stylists, advisors and guests of high society. No one noticed her as usual, but she saw everything. Every look, every step, every tension disguised as excitement. And even with his stomach wrapped with nervousness, he held the cleaning cloth tight as if it were the only possible anchor in that ocean of vanity. The 5 women were impeccable. Amanda in a tight red dress that seemed to scream for attention. Natalie in navy blue, cold as the silk she wore. Veronica bet on classic black. Brielle in exaggerated gold. And Candice, always theatrical, with a shimmering white look and silver heels. They looked at each other like predators in an invisible ring, trying to smile at each other as their eyes said it all. This crown is mine. Jonathan appeared alongside Aidan. He wore a light grey suit, elegant, discreet. The boy, in a blue blazer, shook his father's hand tightly. The two walked to the small stage set up in the center of the garden. The guests sat down on the white chairs lined up. Some fanned themselves. Others whispered curiously. Everyone knew that something big was about to happen. Jonathan took the microphone. He paused. He looked around, fixing his eyes for a brief second on Laurie, who was leaning near the outdoor kitchen, with a cloth still in her hands. She lowered her gaze, trying to look busy, but inside her heart drummed. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice firm. "Today is not just a celebration. It is, in fact, a moment of decision, a difficult choice. Not about business, investments, or future strategies, but about what, for me, is the most important thing in life: family." The silence was absolute. As everyone knows, I lost my wife 2 years ago, and since then, my son Aidan and I have learned day after day to survive absence, silence, and longing. Life, with all its richness, has not taught us how to deal with the emptiness that the lack of maternal love leaves. And that's why today, after weeks of living with these 5 incredible women, I'm here to announce who could be the new female presence in my son's life. The candidates adjusted themselves in their chairs. Amanda smiled, already glimpsing her victory. Veronica crossed her legs safely. Natalie nodded slightly. Candice straightened her hair. Brielle just watched, trying to read any trace on Jonathan's face. "I'd like the 5 of them to join me here on stage." They stood up. The flashes intensified. They climbed the white marble steps one by one. Jonathan greeted them with a subtle gesture, keeping himself in the center. Aidan stood by her side, quietly. "But before any announcement," he continued, "I must show something that, to this day, has remained hidden, something that maybe helps everyone here to understand, which really means being a mother." He signaled to the coach next to the screen. The curtains opened. The panel lit up. A video began to play. The images, recorded by the mansion's internal cameras, were edited with precision. First, Amanda appeared throwing the perfume on the floor, tearing clothes and playing the victim. Afterwards, Veronica and Brielle laughed as they watched Laurie cleaning on her knees. Candice going through the cleaning lady's purse and hiding personal items. Natalie suggesting spreading the rumor of seduction. The scenes followed one another like punches in the stomach of the audience. The guests murmured in shock. Investors exchanged glances. A lady in the front row put her hand to her mouth. The candidates, now pale, froze on stage. Amanda tried to smile. Brielle tried to laugh, but the damage was already done. Laurie, still close to the kitchen, felt her legs wobble. He leaned against the wall. I couldn't believe my eyes. The images didn't just clear her name. They revealed the cruel theater that surrounded her all those days. Jonathan returned to the microphone. "I could go on showing more, but I believe we've seen enough." He turned to the candidates. "You said you were here for Aidan, that they wanted to form a family, but what I saw was something else. What I saw was vanity, falsehood, and contempt. Not only with me, but with someone you judged inferior, with someone who, even in the face of all this circus, never lost his dignity." He paused. He looked at Laurie. The person who showed the most love, care, and truth here. She was not dressed in gala. He was in a cleaning uniform, and even so, he was the one who saw us the most as humans. Aidan let go of his father's hand. He came down from the stage alone. He walked among the guests, his small, firm steps. It passed through the 5 women. None had the courage to speak. It reached Laurie. He stopped in front of her. He held out his hand. "Come with me." Laurie widened her eyes. The tears were already flowing before she could even breathe. Aidan held her hand tightly. He looked at everyone and said in a clean voice, "I choose her." The entire hall came to a standstill, and before any reaction was possible, Jonathan spoke only one sentence. "And if he chose, it's because his heart knows what real love is." But what was about to happen there? It was even greater than any choice, because someone in that audience would not accept in silence to lose the game. And what would emerge from that silence? I would be able to transform everything. The tension that hung in the air was thick like the veil of smoke rising from a candle about to go out. The 5 women remained paralyzed on stage, their smiles cracked and their eyes fleeing from every screen that lit up behind them. Jonathan, now in the center of all eyes, did not tremble. His tone was calm, but every word fell like a hammer. "Before I announce who will be my new wife and Aidan's new mother, I need to do something that perhaps many here did not expect," he said with a firm look. "Show who you really are, and who has been too invisible for too long." The screen lit up again. New images began to emerge, this time interspersed with audio captured from security cameras and microphones hidden around the house. The first sequence showed Amanda in front of the mirror, rehearsing a fake cry. She murmured, "If I can get him emotional, that's it. The child is just a detail." "Udi!" The hall fell silent. Some people let out sighs of astonishment. Amanda tried to laugh and said, almost voiceless, "That was taken out of context." But no one answered. Then Veronica appeared talking on the cell phone in a mocking tone. "Just imagine, being exchanged for a cleaning lady? That's a bad joke. People of this level should be cleaning the bathroom at a bus station, not inside a mansion." The screen froze on her face as she laughed. The woman closest to the front row turned to her husband and whispered, "What a horror." The next scene brought Brielle going through documents from the house, inventing an absurd story. Let's spread that she tried to seduce Jonathan, who is in debt, who falsified references. It won't last a week after that. Another voice appears off-screen, laughing and encouraging. Jonathan paused for a moment. He took a deep breath. He looked at the guests, the investors, the journalists. Then she looked at Aidan, who was shaking Laurie's hand, still standing at the side of the stage. There's more. The video changed to a quick sequence of Natalie and Candice sitting on the porch, sipping wine. "That woman cries easily," Candice said. "Just look at her and it makes you want to cry too, out of pity. But those who feel sorry lose. The game here is about status." Natalie replied, "We need to put pressure on Jonathan. This story of a perfect mother is tiring. Let's say that it is dangerous, that the boy gets attached out of need." The video was interrupted with a slight fade out. In the absolute silence that followed, Jonathan climbed a step on stage. He turned to the 5 women. "This," he said, "is what has been built away from the eyes of the majority, a dispute for appearance marked by lies, envy, and disrespect. I was silent, watching, because I needed to understand how far you would go, and you went too far." Amanda was crying for real now, but out of shame. Candice crossed her arms, visibly annoyed. Veronica kept her chin up, as if she still wanted to sustain a pose of dignity, but it was too late. Jonathan pointed to the unlit screen. "That's the truth. And now I ask everyone here, does this represent motherhood for you? Does this represent love, care, patience, presence?" The guests were appalled. Some women in the audience shook their heads in disapproval. A gentleman stood up and applauded slowly. The cook Maria, watching everything from the corner, put her hand to her chest as if holding her heart. Laurie remained silent. He felt his legs tremble, but he did not run away. At that moment, she was the center of the hurricane, but also the only one standing with a clean soul. And it was at that moment that something profound happened. The collective gaze turned to her, for the first time, not as a cleaner, but as a woman, as a human being, as someone who, even in silence, maintained truths that many would never have the courage to say. Jonathan came down from the stage. He stopped in front of her. He held out his hand. Laurie's eyes were wet, but there was a glow that wouldn't fade. "Do you still trust me?" he asked. She hesitated. He did not answer with words. He just nodded with a small nod, because confidence sometimes doesn't need sound, and in that instant, she knew she was no longer alone. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Enjoy this video and subscribe, and let's make this story reach those who need it, because there are truths that heal only when they are shared. The hall still seemed suspended in time, but on the opposite side, someone was walking towards the stage. A familiar face, an old business partner of Jonathan's, a man with a tough expression, and in his eyes there was something dark. Because not everyone there was willing to see the truth triumph, and what he carried in his hands, it could change everything again. Aidan walked slowly, with small but accurate steps, as if carrying a truth that not even adults had the courage to say out loud. The mansion's garden, once lit only by spotlights and spotlights, now seemed to pulsate with something stronger, a lively, silent expectation that caught every eye. The 5 women still on stage watched in a complete state of denial. They couldn't process what they were seeing. The boy ignored them all, past them without even turning his face. Their luxury dresses, their expensive perfumes, their rehearsed poses, all that was invisible in the face of the purity of that gesture. Laurie was in the background, almost hidden behind a drinks table. There was no makeup, no jewelry. He wore his navy blue uniform, his hair tied up anyway, his hands clasped over his rumpled apron. She didn't even breathe, not out of fear, but out of unbelief. And when he saw Aidan approaching, his eyes filled with water, he stood before her, looked into her eyes and said in a sweet but firm voice, "I choose her." The sound of those words was like thunder that fell from the sky in the middle of the afternoon. The hall, previously filled with whispers and judgmental looks, plunged into dense silence. It was as if time had stopped to listen only to that boy. The audience's breath was bated. The socialites turned pale. Amanda put her hand to her chest, as if she had been punched. Candice dropped the glass of sparkling wine. And Laurie felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "Aidan," she stammered, her voice breaking. But the boy squeezed his hand tightly and repeated with teary eyes, "I choose you, Laurie, because you listened to me, hug me, really look at me. You told me stories on the night that no one else came to say goodnight to me. You taught me that even those who have lost a child can teach another to be happy." At that moment, Jonathan walked up to them. The audience remained in shock, some with tears flowing. He stopped next to the cleaning lady, took out of his pocket a small velvet case, and opening it calmly, revealed a simple but beautiful ring. Nothing fancy, only true. "Laurie Monroe," he said in a firm but emotional voice, "it's not just my son who chose you. I choose you too. Not out of pity nor out of impulse, but because from the beginning you were the only one to act truthfully in this house. You took care of Aidan when I was lost. You were a presence when everything around you was appearance. Will you marry me?" Laurie put her hand to her mouth. Tears fell unrestrained. She looked at the boy, then at Jonathan, then at the audience who were now watching her as if they could finally see the woman behind the uniform. She hesitated. Her body trembled. And he murmured, "But I'm just a cleaner." Jonathan smiled, kneeling, still with the ring in his hand. "No, Laurie. You are everything this family needed. It is dignified, it is strong, it is love, and no one can erase that." The clapping started timidly, then spread. One of the company's sponsors stood up and gave a standing ovation. Soon, the entire audience followed. The cook, Maria, cried and smiled at the same time. Aidan hugged Laurie by the waist, as if he had just rescued his own heart. And the 5 women, they came down from the stage in silence, one by one, defeated not by scandal but by truth. And maybe that's why we can't give up what we carry in our chest, because there are things that seem small, invisible, but it is precisely there that greatness lives. And if you've come this far, feeling this story pulsating like a mirror of some part of you, it doesn't let go of that connection. Stay with me until the end, because the most beautiful moment is yet to happen. Because even after the truth is revealed, there is still a secret that can change everything, and he was much closer than anyone could have imagined. The next morning, the newspapers were on the newsstands even before the sun rose. The covers bore faces blurred by fake tears, smiles frozen in shame, and headlines that looked like gunshots. The Scarsdale rich girl's hoax. The boy chose the cleaning lady, the fall of the elite's darlings. It was as if an entire city was waking up from a trance. Gossip blogs burst into the air. Social networks, in a frenzy, videos of Aidan's choice, Jonathan's speech, the revealing snippets from the cameras. Everything circulated like gunpowder, burning reputations that once seemed untouchable. Amanda Whitmore lost 3 major advertising contracts with beauty brands in less than 24 hours. Her followers, previously passionate about her routines of self-care and female empathy, started to attack her in the comments. Fake, cruel, dangerous, disguised as an influencer. In a brief live, Amanda tried to cry, but even her tears seemed too made up. The public did not forgive. Natalie DeLuca has had her medical license placed under review. Patients refused to be seen by her. Comments said, "If you do this to a cleaning lady, imagine with a patient." His clinic, once full of appointments, woke up with closed doors and withered flowers left by someone who wrote on a note, "Ethics cannot be bought with a scalpel." Brielle Thompson returned to Texas with her tail between her legs. She tried to publish a note in the local newspaper saying that she had been misinterpreted, but was contradicted by clear images where she appears spreading rumors and lies about Laurie. His social circle went up in smoke, and ironically, the same people who invited her to charity balls now treated her like a social plague. Veronica Blake lost her position as executive director on the board of one of the largest technology companies in the country. The foundation for which he worked in defense of gender equality immediately cut ties. The official note said, "We do not condone elitist, discriminatory, and inhumane attitudes." Veronica went into seclusion, and newspapers began to dig deeper into his past. Candice Langford was the one who tried the most to save her image. She participated in a live morning show, sitting on the beige sofa next to a gentle but incisive presenter. He said that he just wanted to protect the boy who was fragile. He said that the intentions were not bad, but it was enough for the presenter to play excerpts of the video where she negotiated lies and mocked Laurie, for the audience to explode in comments of indignation. As she left the station, a group of simple women waited for her at the door with signs saying, "You don't represent us." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Laurie woke up before 6, as usual. The difference was that now the whole world knew his name, not by scandals, nor by golden filters, but because she had been the only one to remain standing when everyone wanted to see her on her knees. He still wore the same uniform. He still washed the dishes with steady hands. He still swept as someone who understands the power of taking care of the floor of others. But now, his eyes carried something extra: respect. By you, by the way traveled, for what she endured in silence. The cell phone vibrated non-stop. Messages from women from all over the country. One of them read, "I'm a day laborer in Alabama and I cried watching your video. You spoke for us." Another from a caregiver for the elderly in Chicago. "I was moved by her dignity. You won for all of us." There were hundreds, thousands. The voice of those who never had a stage now echoed in every corner of the internet. Laurie became a symbol, not of fame, but of truth. And in one of the most shared videos, a phrase said by Aidan during the hug in the garden of the party was repeated like a mantra among women who carried their families on their backs. She chose me first, even when no one saw. That was it. It was always that. Real mothers are the ones who choose to love, even when the whole world turns its face. Jonathan, now with his hand intertwined with hers, followed the repercussion from afar. The press knocked on the door. The networks asked for interviews, documentaries, contracts with publishers, but Laurie refused everything with a sweet smile. I just want to take care of what's mine now. And if this story has touched you so far, if somewhere inside you there is also an invisible struggle, a dignity that no one sees, it makes this story go further. Like this video, subscribe, share. Because when a simple woman wins with truth, it is as if they all win together. But while the dust settled and the world seemed at last to bow before justice, a letter arrived in the mail. No sender, handwritten, addressed to Laurie. And what was inside that envelope? It could change everything again. The sun softly poured through the windows of the main wing of the Harrison mansion, now illuminating a reality that, months ago, would have seemed impossible. The house was still imposing, the marble columns, the chandeliers hanging elegantly from the high ceiling. But something essential had changed. The soul of that place, and much of it came from Laurie, who, even without a uniform, continued with the same essence as always. Now she wore light dresses, loose hair, simple slippers on her feet. But the way he walked around the house was different, not with arrogance, Laurie would never have that, but with the quiet presence of someone who was finally seen. Every morning, even before the employees woke up, she was the first to come down. He put on his apron, not out of obligation, but out of affection, and prepared Aidan's coffee with his bare hands. The boy liked the milk with cinnamon, the bread with butter kneaded with a fork, and the fruits cut into a star shape. It was the ritual of the two. The table was too big for two, but they filled every corner with conversation and laughter. Aidan looked like another. Smile with your eyes. He slept peacefully. He got better grades, and above all looked at people as his mother taught him, with curiosity and respect. At school, the coordinator pulled Jonathan into a corner once and said in a low voice, "He's been another boy since she arrived. More confident, calmer. He feels loved." Jonathan, in turn, relearned how to be a man and a father. He no longer hid behind figures or contracts. He spent more time at home, listened more than he spoke. And when he looked at Laurie at the end of the day, it was as if he saw not just a companion, but the truth that his whole life had avoided. In her eyes, he found roots, ground, direction. Laurie began to participate in the company's projects, but not as a decorative symbol. His idea for the program, Hiring with Heart, was embraced with force. The project sought to reinsert invisible women, caregivers, day laborers, immigrants, single mothers, into the labor market, not only with a job, but with respect. She made a point of visiting the centers, talking to the women, listening to their stories. He said tenderly, "I know what it's like to have to smile while being ignored." Laurie's story, shared in videos and texts, began to be studied in universities, mentioned in congresses. But she remained the same. He refused glamorous events. She preferred the simplicity of home, the flowers she grew in the garden, the stories told at night to Aidan. And always, before going to sleep, he knelt by the bed. His prayers asked for nothing more. They were just grateful for the courage that came in silence, for justice that came without crying, and for the love that came without a mask. It was during an ordinary afternoon, one of those that seemed to only breathe tranquility, that Laurie received a new letter. It was delivered by hand by an unknown delivery man. The envelope was beige, no logo, no sender, only his name written with a slanted handwriting. She spent a few seconds with him between her fingers, her heart beating faster without explanation. He sat on the sofa in the living room where Aidan was concentrating. It opened carefully. Inside, there was only a sheet folded into 3 parts. The paper was thin, old, the shaky handwriting. "Laurie, if this letter has reached you, it's because I've finally found the courage to tell the truth. Something I've hidden for too long. Something about the accident, and about who was driving that car. Sorry for everything. It's time for you to know." The leaf slipped out of her hands. His chest tightened. Time has stopped. What could that letter reveal? What still existed hidden in the past? And why only now, when everything seemed finally at peace, did it come to light? Who else was involved? And what would Laurie have to face to protect, once again, those she loved? The sun softly touched the garden of the Harrison mansion, where Laurie, now with her hair down and a light dress, sat on a flowered towel next to Jonathan, Aidan, and little Emily, who slept peacefully in her arms. Aidan's laughter echoed through the trees as he proudly showed a drawing for the school, a house with 3 hearts smiling under a blue sky. "This is my family," he said, with the sweetness of someone who knows he finally belongs somewhere. Laurie looked at him, then at Jonathan, who was holding her hand firmly, and then looked up to the sky, whispering in a breath of soul, "Thank you, God." She remembered the days when she cried in silence behind the cold doors of that same mansion, invisible among sparkles that never saw her. But there, at that moment, wrapped in true love, she understood that no pain is eternal when one carries dignity in the heart. Jonathan, teary-eyed, said quietly, "You changed my life, not for the way he cleans a house, but for the way he loves." Laurie smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead, feeling that for the first time the world was at peace inside her. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson of all, that it's not appearance, status, or last name that defines a person's worth, but the silent truth they choose to carry even when no one is looking. Because in the end, it's not about winning with shouts, it's about staying courageous. If this story touched you in any way, if it reminded you of someone or awakened some memory that you kept inside, I want to thank you for staying with me so far. Your like is like a tight hug that warms up and supports this channel, and your subscription is an invitation for you to come back for the next coffee when your heart asks for another story like this. Right here in the comments of which city you are watching. It's so beautiful to see where this network of feelings is coming from. And it activates the bell too, so you don't miss it when the coffee is ironed again, because there are still so many stories like Laurie's hidden in humble uniforms, waiting for the right moment to be told. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.